The theater was filled with the familiar buzz of excitement that always came before an America's Got Talent performance. The lights dimmed slightly, the audience settled, and the stage glowed under a soft blue light. From behind the curtain, a man in a faded janitor uniform stepped forward, clutching the microphone nervously. His name was Richard Goodall, and he looked nothing like the typical AGT contestant. He was humble, quiet, and clearly out of his comfort zone. The crowd began to whisper as he walked to the center of the stage. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious, while Heidi Klum smiled warmly, sensing something special about him. When asked who he was and what he did, Richard replied softly, "I'm a school janitor. I've been cleaning classrooms and hallways for over 20 years." The audience applauded, touched by his humility. Simon asked him what brought him there, and Richard, taking a deep breath, said, "I want to show the kids at my school that dreams don't expire. No matter who you are or what you do, you can still shine." The sincerity in his voice silenced the entire room. Even before he sang a note, people were rooting for him. When the music started, it was instantly recognizable, "Don't Stop Believin" by Journey. Richard closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first few notes were soft, shaky, almost fragile. But within seconds, something shifted. His voice grew stronger, richer, filled with emotion and life experience. It wasn't the polished sound of a trained singer, but it was powerful, honest, and real. The crowd began to cheer, and the judges exchanged glances of disbelief. Simon's eyebrows raised, Sofia Vergara covered her mouth in awe, and Heidi pressed her hand over her heart. As Richard sang about holding on to that feeling, it felt like he wasn't just singing lyrics, he was telling his own story. Each word carried the weight of years spent working quietly in the background, unnoticed, dreaming of a moment like this. Halfway through the song, the audience couldn't contain their emotions. People stood up, clapping and swaying along. The lights intensified, bathing the stage in warm gold and blue tones that matched the emotion in Richard's voice. His eyes were still closed, but you could feel his heart in every word. It was as if he had carried this dream inside him for decades, and now, finally, it was breaking free. When he hit the high notes, the theater erupted. The sound of his voice seemed to echo beyond the stage, reaching into every soul watching. Even the camera operators looked emotional, trying to capture every second of his transformation from a humble janitor into a man living his dream. As the final chorus filled the air, the audience's cheers grew louder. By the time the last note ended, every single person in the theater was standing. The applause was deafening, but Richard just stood there frozen, overwhelmed, tears welling in his eyes. He couldn't believe what had just happened. His dream, one that he'd tucked away for so long, was suddenly real. The judges took a moment to gather themselves. Simon smiled, shaking his head in disbelief. Sofia said softly, "You just reminded everyone that dreams really don't have an age limit." Howie Mandel added, "You've inspired millions tonight." And then Heidi Klum stood up, her expression full of pride and emotion. She looked at Richard and said, "You represent every person who has ever worked hard behind the scenes, never asking for attention but still dreaming of their moment. You are the heart of this show." The audience went wild, cheering her on. Richard stood there trembling, hands over his face, not knowing what was about to happen next. Heidi's voice grew emotional as she said, "You deserve this moment more than anyone." And with that, she pressed the golden buzzer. Instantly, golden confetti exploded from the ceiling like a burst of magic. The audience screamed, the judges stood, and Richard fell to his knees in disbelief. The music swelled, matching the intensity of the moment. Heidi ran to the stage, hugging him tightly as confetti continued to rain down. He was crying openly now, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Thank you so much." Heidi said softly, "You earned this. You touched all of our hearts tonight." The audience chanted his name over and over, "Richard. Richard. Richard." Their voices blending with the golden rain falling all around him. It was no longer just a talent show, it was a celebration of courage, hope, and the power of never giving up on a dream. The camera captured every tear, every sparkle of gold, every smile. Richard looked up through the confetti, his face glowing with disbelief and gratitude. The children at his school, who had always seen him as the quiet janitor who whistled tunes while sweeping floors, would now see him as a hero. He had done what so many people only dream of. He stood on one of the biggest stages in the world, showed his true self, and won hearts across the globe. Simon clapped slowly, his expression soft and emotional, a rare moment where words failed him. Sofia and Howie joined Heidi on stage, wrapping Richard in a group hug as the confetti continued to fall. The crowd wouldn't stop cheering, and Richard couldn't stop smiling through his tears. When the music faded and the lights dimmed slightly, Richard looked out at the audience and simply said, "Thank you for believing in me." That sentence summed up everything: the years of quiet struggle, the humility, the patience, and the faith that someday his voice would be heard. The golden confetti sparkled around his feet like a promise that dreams can truly come true at any age, in any uniform, on any stage. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching that greatness can come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, the kindest souls have the loudest songs waiting to be heard.